Hey, we finally made it to Link, the little fairy boy in a green outfit with his sword and his shield. Pretty classic. Let's just get right into it because we got a lot of games to cover. First up, The Legend of Zelda on the NES. It's pretty good. It has aged. Good luck completing this without a map or a strategy guide, because if you're going to do that, you're going to need an entire summer. It is fun and introduced some staples of the series, such as the items and the Triforce. You could definitely give this one a shot, but completing it is far from necessary. Zelda 2 took our top-down formula and turned it on its side. It's more of a side-scroller like Mario now, but not platforming. It's got a lot more RPG elements, and this game is very hard, and it's kind of the black sheep of the franchise. Die-hard fans are probably not going to like this, but I would say you can skip this one. Ooh, big boy number 3, A Link to the Past. This is the start of the classic Zelda formula. We got the light world and the dark world, 16-bit graphics. This game is awesome. I love it. Super fun. Everything's better. The dungeons are better, better items, better story. It's pretty darn great. Next up, we have the first portable Zelda. Link's Awakening was released on the Game Boy, and I would say play the remake. The original is odd because you can only assign weapons and items to 2 buttons, because that's all you had on the Game Boy. So if you're interested, I would say play the remake. The story is still fantastic. It's one of the few games that doesn't actually take place in Hyrule, the central land of the Zelda universe. We had a bit of a drought in Zelda games after this one, until the release of Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64 in 1998. I'm sure many would say it's worth the wait. Now, speaking personally, this is the Zelda game I'm most nostalgic for. Not because of the actual game, but because of Super Smash Bros. Melee. The models were taken from Ocarina of Time. This game centers around the use of an ocarina, and you actually get to play songs. And these songs are awesome. They are really well done, seriously. I really love the aesthetic of this game. It introduces us to Sheik and a couple other staples in the Zelda franchise moving forward. The central mechanic in this game is time. You use the ocarina to switch between young Link and adult Link. It's pretty cool and makes for some interesting puzzles later in the game. Ocarina of Time was so successful that the Zelda team decided to reuse assets and make a new game with those same assets. That's why Majora's Mask looks so similar, but they took a lot of different creative pathways with the way Majora's Mask plays out. First of all, you're young Link for the whole game. You still have your ocarina, but it is mostly used to fast travel around the world. You end up in this dreamlike world called Termina, where you have 3 days to stop the moon from crashing into the earth and killing everyone. Yeah, it's a bit of a jump. There are only 4 dungeons, none of them stink. Like the Shadow Temple in Ocarina of Time. That is dumb. Ganon is also not our bad guy. It's this weird thing called Skull Kid who wears Majora's Mask. I'm not going to spoil it, but the final boss fight is amazing. Next up, we have Oracle of Ages and Oracle of Seasons. These are the first 2 Zelda games not made by Nintendo, but made by Capcom. They went for a Pokemon style thing where they released a pair, and if you had both, you got some extra content. They're cool, but definitely not a contender for our top spot. Next up, we got Wind Waker on the GameCube. People hated this when it was revealed because it has this cartoony art style. However, I've never found any issue with the art style. The issue I have with this game is the dungeons are really lame. I don't mind all the sailing, I don't mind the art style, I just don't think the dungeons are that well done. I have always liked pirates though, and of course, this one being on the GameCube holds a special place in my heart. Next up, we have Minish Cap on the Game Boy Advance. Kinda don't really like this one, to be quite honest. I didn't think the dungeons were all that great. The Kinstone mechanic sucks. It sucks. I'm sorry, it's bad. It's really bad. I don't like it. And above all, it just really doesn't stick out to me. The whole shrinking mechanic is cool, but it's kinda eh. Twilight Princess, the Zelda game people wanted before Wind Waker. Those fans finally got the realistic art style they were clamoring for, and a more serious tone, and Link being able to turn into a wolf. Now, not that there's anything wrong with that, but I feel like it kind of disqualifies it from being the most definitive Zelda. This game is praised for its amazing dungeons. The art style looks fine nowadays, but really, some of the cutscenes, the story, and the dungeons really stick out. Also, it's got the best partner. I don't know why, Midna strikes me as the kind of person I want to have as a drummer in my band. Maybe it's because she's got 2 hands and that weird ghost hand coming out of her head. She could do some really crazy fills. After that, we had the 2 DS games, Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks. These are both a no-go for most definitive, They rely on touch controls and are probably my least favorite in the entire series. So we're just gonna zip right on past them. Skyward Sword was released on the Wii and as such utilizes motion controls. I was never a huge fan of this, and honestly that alone is enough for me to not consider it as one of the most definitive Zelda games. The Legend of Zelda: A Link Between Worlds. It is a masterpiece! I'm telling you, please play this game if you have not. It's on the 3DS. It is so good. It's a spiritual successor to A Link to the Past. It uses the same map, but you've got this new mechanic where you become a painting and you can slide around on walls. There's a great difficulty curve, and it is so perfectly tuned. Again, the final boss fight in this one is so satisfying. And then we had a drought and Breath of the Wild came out. Okay, here's the thing about Breath of the Wild. It's kind of my favorite game of all time, but I don't think it's the most definitive Zelda, because when you think of Link, when you think of the Zelda franchise, you think of Link in his green outfit with maybe some iconic items, the boomerang, the hook shot. Maybe in 20 years, when the open world formula of Breath of the Wild has become the standard, it will be the most definitive. But for now, it's too much of a departure to say it is the single most definitive Zelda game, that if you were going to play one, you would play this one. Now that said, if you're looking for the best game, Breath of the Wild, no question. But let's get into the discussion about the most definitive game, shall we? My two considerations for the most definitive title are A Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time. Now, deciding between these two really depends on whether or not you think of the series as a 2D game or a 3D game. Basically, if you were born in the past year like myself, you visualize Zelda as a 3D game, so Ocarina of Time would be your most definitive Zelda. Especially being in the gaming community, hearing how Ocarina of Time is the greatest game of all time and how legendary it is. But I think I have to give it to the game that started the Zelda formula as we know it, and that's Link to the Past. It's got all the classic music that we now love, the whole do 3 beginning dungeons and that opens up the rest of the world thing, the whole switching between worlds. It's pretty iconic and honestly, really heartwarming to play.